Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the annual and special meeting of STEP Energy Services Limited. Please note the meeting will be recorded. I would like to introduce Mr. Douglas Friel, Chairman of STEP Energy Services Limited. Mr. Friel, the floor is all yours.
Thank you. Welcome to the annual and special meeting of the shareholders of STEP Energy Services Limited. I'm Douglas Friel, Chair of the Board of Directors of STEP, and I will chair this meeting. This year, in light of the unprecedented public health impact as a result of COVID-19, STEP is holding this meeting in a virtual audio-only online format using TSX Trust Company's virtual meeting platform. This meeting is accessible to all our shareholders and validly appointed proxy holders, regardless of physical location, to participate, submit questions, and vote. Only registered shareholders who held shares in their name as of the March 26, 2021 record date of this meeting or their validly appointed proxy holders are entitled to vote at this meeting. Shareholders were also encouraged to vote in advance of the meeting and to submit questions in advance by email through STEP's Investor Relations email. This meeting will be conducted in two parts. I will proceed with the formal business required to be addressed, following which we will have a corporate presentation and open the meeting to questions. A number of STEP's officers have joined this meeting, including Regan Davis, President and Chief Executive Officer, Michael Kelly, Chief Executive Officer and Michael Kelly, Chief Financial Officer, Steve Glanville, Vice President, Operations and Chief Operating Officer, Josh Kane, Vice President, Legal and General Counsel. The meeting will now come to order. I will ask Josh Kane, STEP's General Counsel, to act as Secretary of the meeting and TSX Trust Company to act as scrutineer. Pursuant to the current bylaws of the corporation, business may only be transacted at this meeting if at least two shareholders or duly appointed proxy holders are present in person, virtually, or representing in the aggregate not less than 15% of the shares entitled to vote at the meeting. The preliminary scrutineer's report has been received and shows that approximately 45,352,000 common shares are represented at the meeting, being approximately 66.977% of the shares eligible to be voted at the meeting. I am therefore advised that there is a quorum present, and I now declare that the meeting is regularly called and properly constituted for the transaction of business. I direct a copy of the scrutineer's report be attached to the minutes of this meeting by the Secretary. I will now commence the formal business of the meeting. The business of the meeting is described in the Management Information Circular dated March 23, 2021, which accompanied the notice of meeting. I have received a declaration prepared by TSX Trust Company indicating that either a notice of this meeting and the accompanying proxy materials or the notice and access notice, as applicable, was duly mailed to shareholders of record as at March 26, 2020. I direct a copy of the notice of meeting, accompanying proxy materials, and the notice and access notice with proof of mailing be attached to the minutes of this meeting by the Secretary. I will take the notice of meeting as read, and with the consent of the meeting will dispense with the reading of it. We will conduct the votes on the matters before us by ballot. Each registered shareholder or their duly appointed proxy holder is entitled to vote on the matter and has one vote in respect of each share entitled to be voted on the matter and held by that shareholder. The polls will be open for all resolutions at the same time. Click the voting button on the left menu on your screen when the vote is announced. This will allow you to choose to vote on each resolution immediately or wait until conclusion of discussion on each resolution prior to casting your vote. There will be an opportunity to ask questions on each resolution in turn. To submit a question, click the Ask a Question button on the left menu of your screen and type your question in the text box. Questions can be submitted anytime. Once discussion on all items of business has concluded, I will give you a minute to enter your votes and then declare voting closed on all resolutions. Following the meeting, the results of the meeting will be filed on STEP's SEDAR profile and available on our website. We will run through each of the items on the agenda in turn, responding to questions on that item of business while it is before the meeting. I now declare the polls open on all resolutions. Registered shareholders and duly appointed proxy holders, please click on the voting button in order to cast your votes. If you have already submitted your votes in advance and do not wish to change your vote, you do not need to take further action. Based upon the results of the proxy submitted prior to the meeting, each item of business to be dealt with today has already received the requisite shareholder approval to be passed. The first item of business concerns the presentation of STEP's financial statements for the year ended December 31st, 2020, which have been approved by the Board of Directors of STEP. Copies of the annual financial statements, together with the auditor's report on the financial statements and related management discussion and analysis, are available online. Shareholders who wish to receive a paper copy of these documents should contact our transfer agent, TSX Trust Company. With the consent of the meeting, we shall dispense with the reading of the financial statement and the auditor's report thereon. If there are no questions relating to these documents, we will move to the next item on the agenda. The next item of business is to fix the number of directors. STEP's articles allow for a maximum of 11 directors. There are presently 7 directors, and it is proposed that 7 directors be selected to the Board of Directors at the meeting. As chair, I propose the motion to fix the number of directors to be elected at this meeting at 7. Are there any questions related to this motion? As there are no questions, please cast your votes. The next item of business is the election of the Board of Directors of STEP. The shareholders of STEP have determined that 7 directors be elected at this meeting for the ensuing year or until their successors are elected or appointed. All proposed nominees have consented to stand for re-election and serve as directors if elected. STEP has adopted a majority voting policy whereby in an uncontested election, if any nominee for a director receives a greater number of votes withheld from his or her election than votes for such election, he or she shall tender their resignation to the board following the meeting. The Compensation and Corporate Governance Committee and the Board of Directors will consider the resignation, which is expected to be promptly accepted, except in situations where extraordinary circumstances warrant the applicable director continuing to serve as a member of the Board of Directors. The board will disclose its election decision via press release within 90 days of the meeting. It is now in order to proceed with the election of directors. As chair, I propose the motion to nominate each of the directors listed in STEP's Management Information Circular, being Evelyn Angel, Regan Davis, myself, Douglas Friel, Jeremy Gackley, Donna Garbutt, James Harbilas, and Jason Skihar, for election as directors of the corporation to hold office until the next annual meeting of the shareholders or until their successors are earlier elected or appointed. As no additional nominees were received prior to the meeting in accordance with the advance notice provisions in the corporation's bylaws, I now declare the nominations closed. Please cast your votes. The next item of business is the appointment of auditors and the authorization of the Board of Directors to fix the remuneration of the auditors. As chair, I propose the motion to appoint KPMG LLP Chartered Accountants as auditors of the corporation until the close of the next annual meeting of the shareholders and authorize the directors to fix their remuneration. Are there any questions? If not, please cast your votes. The next item of business is to confirm amendments to STEP's bylaws to allow for virtual meetings. On March 17th, 2021, the board adopted an amendment to STEP's bylaws to provide for virtual shareholders meetings in accordance with the Business Corporations Act of Alberta. At the same time, the board also adopted an amendment to the bylaws to expand the means by which directors may meet beyond telephone and other communication facilities to match the wording in the Act and include other electronic means. In order to maintain the change, the shareholders must approve the amendment to the bylaws. The directors believe that this change is vital to allow the corporation the flexibility to hold meetings virtually where in-person meetings are impossible or impractical to hold. As chair, I propose the motion to confirm amendments STEP confirm amending STEP's bylaws to allow for virtual meetings. Are there any questions? Please cast your vote. For those of you who have not voted on all the resolutions, please do so now, as I will shortly close the poll. It is now 3:10, and the polls will close on all resolutions in a few minutes. So we'll just wait another minute for people to vote if they haven't already voted. The polls are now closed. I declare all resolutions carried and to terminate the meeting. We will now proceed with corporate presentation and informal discussion regarding the business affairs of STEP, hosted by Regan Davis, President and CEO, during which time we will respond to questions from the shareholders. Regan?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome and thanks for joining this presentation, our AGM. I'm going to share some thoughts on 2020, or Q1 of 2021, as well as an outlook for the balance of the year. For those that may not have detailed insight to who STEP is, what I want to emphasize on this slide is of course, we are a coiled tubing company. We're a pressure pumping company, but we also have a very active and profitable fluid and pumping, nitrogen pumping business, as well as a wireline business that operates in the US. Today, we have about 1,000 professionals working for us in both Canada and the US. Roughly 70% of that population is in Canada. And we've been very, very pragmatic about establishing operations in two of the most prolific operating basins in North America, that being the Montney and the Permian. And I'm also very proud to share the story of our very first client when we started the company as a coiled tubing business was Shell. And what that should impress upon you is from the very first time we started business, we had a very sophisticated set of operating philosophies and capabilities, including our safety practices, that allowed us to work for the most sophisticated clients in the basins. And today we still enjoy working for those clients. I do think speaking to the amazing work our team did in managing the COVID pandemic is worth noting. We have had, from the very beginning, a very, very serious approach to managing this pandemic. And ultimately that has been reflected in having very few of our professionals come down with COVID-19. And we're very proud to say that we've had very, very limited interruptions to our operations because of that focus. Now, if we go back a year, we had been put in a position because of this pandemic and, of course, the OPEC price war that had ensued. We implemented some very draconian measures, and a reflection of that was in March 2020, we had 1,450 employees in the company. By the middle of April, we had reduced that number to 450. So just a very, very trying time for the company, a very trying time for our management team. You can imagine dealing with all of those departures, many of them through virtual means, virtual communication. So it was just a very, very uncomfortable period for the company. A reflection of the very tough decisions we did make throughout 2020 is that we did in fact generate free cash flow from operations last year, and again, something we're very proud of. This slide certainly shows all the areas we operate in. Couple things worth noting here is our U.S. team looking for opportunities to increase our coiled tubing utilization did identify opportunities in the Bakken and in the Rockies, and you can see through the map we do in fact have operating bases now in the Bakken and the Rockies that are contributing nicely to our coiled tubing utilization. The other thing I would highlight in this slide is we've got a substantial amount of equipment that is in field-ready condition that can go to the field and create a tremendous amount of financial torque when activity levels and pricing levels warrant that. Our strategic priorities really haven't changed in the last couple of years. I would just spend a minute talking to them because I think they really do tell a story that that reinforces our current focuses. It has been, currently still remains, and always will be about people in our company. We believe that by treating your people right, creating the right culture, a values-focused company, you generate or you are the benefit of a competitive advantage because of the engagement and commitment you get from your workforce, and we definitely benefit from that. We've also been very active investing in our asset base from day one. We still maintain incredibly relevant assets, in some cases industry-leading assets that allow us to drive margin improvements and incremental value for our clients. And third on the list, of course, is a fanatical focus on maintaining a focus on learning and listening to our clients, and then delivering value to their expectations or above their expectations, so that we can continue to build on those relationships and maintain those work programs. The next point is, you know, from the very beginning of the company, we have had a very community-focused focus in the company. We've had a focus on environmental-driven solutions. We've been very stakeholder-focused. I'll speak to a bit more to this in the next few slides, but it is a focus that, working with our clients, does support our communities, minimize the impact of our operations on the environment. Now, we've had a fanatical focus in the business on driving internal business efficiencies and cost control measures that ultimately have translated into a reduction in our days outstanding for receivables. We've seen work efficiencies that have resulted in more efficient use of our administration and operations overhead, and many of those solutions have been developed internally at STEP that really, you know, do create a significant amount of value for the company. And as you can see, our last priority, which cascades out of all of these focuses, is to generate free cash flow that will ultimately be used to retire our debt. And as I've mentioned early, so like since we've started the company, core to our culture has been an ESG focus. I mean, you can see the buckets we consider that make up ESG, and these have been a foundation of the business from the moment we started it. And the next slide, I'll speak a little more detail to what some of these look like. If we get real honest about this, the bulk of what underpins our ESG focus is a drive for economic profitability for both ourselves and our clients, and of course, the fundamental acknowledgement that these are the right things to do. And you can see, I'll just speak to a few points on this slide. We've been a leader in the dual fuel use of dual fuel in our fracturing business since we started it. Today, we still enjoy industry-leading substitution. We're expanding that that focus into our U.S. asset base. Another simple example is on the environment side, we have specialized dryad chem systems that we bring to location. This allows us to avoid bulk transport of liquid chemicals, reducing the risk of vehicle incidents and spills. Moving over to the people side, at the core of our people focus is safety. It is something that you know, in our view, we're best in class in our safety performance. It is a core part of our culture. Another point I'd make here is we have a lot of incredibly talented people in this company, many of them young leaders that are maturing into more sophisticated roles. And from the day we started the company, we've been investing in leadership training to equip them on an accelerated basis to become first-class leaders in the business. On the community side, something that I just can't be proud enough about is we have an annual Christmas Spirit campaign. In the last 10 years, we've raised over $500,000 for local charities in the communities in which we work. We've also been very active in community partnerships. We've been supporting the Red Deer College. We've been a large supporter of STARS. We have a partnership that works through our Indigenous engagement program with the Impact Society. And then on the governance side, I really think it's best said that we value integrity and fairness, and at the core of it, we do the right things, and that drives through you know, our public company governance. It drives through how we treat our partners. It drives through how we treat our coworkers. So it's been a fundamental part of our business, and in fact, now where our focus is beginning to track and measure all of these things, all of the things we do, so that we can be part of a solution with our clients, demonstrating how we are reducing our environmental footprint through our operations. Now, I spoke a bit about our systems. The internal systems we use to improve our internal efficiencies ultimately allow us to interface with our clients more efficiently. I just want to spend some time talking about a couple of the things we do on the operations side. Large bore treating manifolds. You know, this isn't unique to STEP. It's certainly something we've invested in. It allows you to minimize the number of connections on location, which minimizes the risk of spills and failures. It minimizes the time that it takes to rig in. So an investment, you know, related on a technology level that ultimately assists us and our clients. We have a very, very rigorous predictive maintenance program. It's been core to the company since day one. Why does this matter? Well, it allows us to optimize the runtime of our assets and ultimately minimize the cost to run them. Another item is our Step Express fracturing unit. This frac spread is partially electrified. It is something we use in typically the shallower oil plays, results in fewer loads to location, less people to operate it, and ultimately less emissions. And lastly, on the business innovation front, something that I think holds incredible excitement for the company, enabled by our global suite of waterless fracturing IP that we acquired when we bought GasFrac, is our single shot IOR technology. This is in its simplest terms, a recompletion process that involves LPG, chemicals. Ultimately, the intent is to restore production from mature shale wells and help our clients increase their reserve recovery. We're very excited because this technology is going to be field trialed here in the second quarter. So we'll look forward to reporting more on that as we move forward. Clearly, this slide tells the story of our focus on debt reduction. The embedded in our ability to do this is an unbelievably sophisticated focus at the business unit level on how we make money and where we spend money. And this sophistication is something that, again, something we're incredibly proud of. because it trickles right down to our operations folks who now have a deep understanding of how it is we make money and how it is we spend money. Looking at a couple of bubbles here, you can see that Q1 of 21 was roughly 37% of the revenue of 2020's total revenue. So it really does show a reflection of how the industry has improved in the last several months. You can see that, you can see that in Q1 of 20, we've been generating 80% of our revenue out of Canada and 20% of the US. As reflected in our Q1 results, the US has been slower to recover. We are seeing that underway now. In addition, you would see that in Q1, we generated about 25% of our revenue from our coiled tubing business, where historically we're running around 30%. Once again, highlighting that our coiled tubing business has been a bit slower out of in the recovery phase relative to our frac business, but we're seeing, as we look into the balance of the year, that that business improving as well. In 2020, I would just draw your attention back to, you know, kind of the tough decisions we had to make to manage through 2020. You can see, comparing 2019 to 2020, we had a 45% reduction in revenue, but a 33% reduction in EBITDA margin. Again, just an incredible focus on the team to drive efficiencies, cut costs from the business, and do more with less. Speaking of Q1 2021, again, our numbers in 21 versus 20 Q1 are 30% lower. The revenue is 30% lower. But what we can speak to is obviously a recovery that has taken place since the start of the year. It actually really began slowly in the third quarter of last year, but speaking specifically to Q1 of 21, we certainly saw Canada improve in activity levels and in pricing and margin quicker than the US. But we certainly expect and are seeing already an improvement in our US business through Q1 and into Q2 here, and we expect our Q2 business, we expect our US business to become a more positive contributor to our results as the year goes on. And a few comments. I'll let you read these things, but as I summarize sort of the outlook, I think we're seeing an increasing chorus of forecasters recognizing, even with excess OPEC capacity, we are setting up for what could be a structural supply shortage of oil and gas. The quick cycle times that are available with the North American shale play certainly positions North America to be able to step into that supply shortage with increased activity in the field, and certainly it's reasonable to expect that to occur as 2021 unfolds and as we look into 2022. And as noted in earlier slides, we have a large inventory of idle assets ready to go to the field to participate in that recovery, and certainly looking forward to seeing that occur. And with that, I'll close out my comments and certainly welcome any questions. I don't see any questions coming in, so I will thank everyone once again for joining us for our AGM in this presentation, and close the meeting out.
The meeting has now concluded. You may now disconnect.